Hey, how's it going tonight, everyone? So, hope y'all are doing good. Um, Tonight we're going to talk about the book of Zephaniah. So, Zephaniah was a prophet. He is one of the only prophets to have been, um, for his lineage to have been traced back 4 generations. So his great great grandfather was Hezekiah, and he's believed to have been royalty because of his just kind of his knowledge of Jerusalem and specific places in and around Jerusalem. Um, so Hezekiah, like many prophets, was a prophet sent to warn Israel of God's coming judgment. We see in the first book in Zephaniah, which there's 3 books in Zephaniah, we see in the first book that it is a warning of the day of the Lord, and when the day of the Lord comes upon Jerusalem and Judah. We see a warning, like many times, that is a warning for God's people to turn from their wicked ways and to return to the Lord. Many times people look at the Old Testament and they look at God's continuous judgment against nations and peoples and even against Israel, and they think that the Lord was less gracious, was more wrathful in the Old Testament than the New Testament. But in fact, in these books, the books of the different prophets, we see prophecies being spoken of God's judgment. But these prophecies kind of hinge, right? These prophecies hinge on something simple. There is a place in the New Testament where Christ is asked what the greatest commandment is. And he tells them that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. And he says, and second, but similar to this, is to love your neighbor as yourself. He says that on these 2 things, all the prophets and the law hinge. We see Christ mention in the Lord's Prayer, "Forgive us, Lord, our trespasses, as we forgive others of theirs." He reminds them at the end of the Lord's Prayer that if we forgive others, the Lord would forgive us. You see, Israel, in the time that Zephaniah was around, had become a wicked nation, doing evil to one another, doing evil to their children, right? We see them talking about Molech and Baal, and these were gods that people would worship through sexual acts, through sacrificing their children, right? Trying to receive favor from these false gods. Israel had become evil, had adopted practices of foreign nations, had turned from the Lord. And even in that, even in the book of Zephaniah, we see that the Lord, he warns Israel, but he also tells them that if they would turn from those things, that it was his intention to create and to save and to preserve a remnant of Israel, those who would love him, who would serve him, and in turn would love each other, right? Would live a righteous life. What we can learn from the prophets more than anything is that God is a forgiving and a gracious God. He spent a long time allowing Israel to live in a way that was not pleasing to him. And it wasn't because he was just okay with that, but it was because he had a desire for Israel to turn from their wicked ways, to turn to his love and his righteousness and be saved. Does that mean that the Lord isn't just? No, he is just. But he's also merciful. And we see that very strongly in most of the prophets. We see Jonah, who, when he went to Nineveh, wanted the Lord to bring wrath and judgment upon Nineveh. Right? And it was the Lord's intent to do so, if Nineveh did not repent. And when Nineveh repented, the Lord spared them. Jonah wasn't happy about it, but the Lord spared them. See, if there's anything we can take from this, it's that the Lord's love, it never ends. That if we would turn from our wicked ways and we would turn to him, that he would lift us up, that he would restore us. I pray today that if you hear these words, that you would turn to the Lord. That whatever it is, that you would come to him. Because not only if we turn from our wicked ways does the Lord accept us, but he can help us. He can strengthen us to overcome the ways of the world. I pray that y'all have a blessed week and that you turn to the Lord and remember his faithfulness.